Yeah.
Perfect. Well, yeah, thank you everyone for joining us for tonight's webinar. We're really excited to talk about a topic that not everybody associates with the middle grades, but we think they should. Work-based learning in the middle grades is part of students' career exploration during this time of young adolescence when they're so open to new opportunities. So we're so grateful to our panelists for joining us tonight and for American Student Assistance for helping us moderate this panel. So I'm going to let us get right to the content, and I'll pass it over to Ashley Hemme, who's the Director of Corporate Social Responsibility at American Student Assistance. So Ashley, please take it away.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. Welcome, everybody. We really appreciate you making the time during the December, right before the holidays. I'm sure for many of you, it's the end of a school day. So making the time to join us in this conversation, which I'm really, really excited about. So the title of this webinar is Building a Career Readiness Middle School Work-Based Learning. And if you are attending, you probably work with middle schoolers in some capacity. So I think I'd be preaching to the choir by saying that we all know that the middle grades is a really pivotal time for both the students' education and their lives. Middle schoolers, we're talking about grades 5 through 9 usually are the middle grades. We know that they tend to be navigating new environments. Often they're transitioning into new school buildings or into like the upper school of a larger school building. They're learning how to build relationships and their relationships with their peers and then with caring adults in their world. They're learning how to explore their own individual identities and exploring those in different contexts. And they're also developing 21st century skills that they will use for the rest of their lives and in future careers in education. And so this is such a formative time for students, and there's some major implications there. Middle grade students are at higher risk for disengagement, and this could impact their high school education, as well as their decisions about post-secondary pathways. So we're excited today to have a discussion specifically about work-based learning, and we're going to talk about what that means. But usually when you hear about work-based learning, it's often used in high school and college, having these real-world connections to careers and experiences for students. But we're going to talk about how this can be a really powerful way to advance equity for middle grade students and expose them to a diverse range of careers and professionals and gain some strategies and skills that they can use today in their classroom, as well as learn how to make decisions about high school and beyond. During this conversation, we'll share some resources, tips, and strategies so you can implement this in your own programs and school districts. So real quick housekeeping here. We have the Q&A feature, which you can use to ask questions. We're going to have a really fun discussion, but as you have questions throughout, I'm going to set some time at the end, but if something really exciting kind of pops up during our discussion, I'll ask it kind of on the fly as well. I'll be keeping an eye on that. So without further ado, we're going to get started. So before we really get into the heart of the discussion, we're going to do some quick introductions of each panelist. As Stephanie mentioned, I'll introduce myself first. I'm Ashley Hemme. I'm the Director of Corporate Social Responsibility with American Student Assistance. So what that very long job title means is I oversee all of our philanthropic grant making and relationships. And that actually includes Apprentice Learning and Big Picture Learning. And we have folks here who are going to share their work with you today, as well as AMLE is a partner of ours. ASA is a national nonprofit with a mission of helping students know themselves, know their options, and make informed career and post-secondary education decisions. At ASA, we strive to change the way young people learn about careers, and we are devoted to shifting the conversation around career exploration in school buildings, state houses, communities, and through direct digital experiences. So for the rest of the panelists, we're just going to kind of round robin this real quick. If you want to share your name, your job title, and just a real quick sentence or two about your organization and the work that you do. So Letta, if we can start with you, and we'll kind of just go around in the circle here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me be a part of this panel and welcoming Apprentice Learning. So my name is Letta Neely. I'm the Vice President of a program for Apprentice Learning. We are founded in 2012. And Apprentice Learning provides real world work experiences for middle grade youth. We do this in direct partnership with schools, communities, families, and employers. and we leverage career exploration to teach skills, ignite purpose, and nurture dreams. So it's now 2022, and we are officially 10 years old, and our mission remains the same.
Thank you and welcome. We're so happy to have you here with us.
Thank you.
Tamara, if you'd like to introduce yourself next.
Sure. Hi, I'm Tamara Marco Tam. I'm executive director in the Elma Lewis Center in the Social Justice Collaborative at Emerson College. And Emerson College, for folks online here, is in Boston, downtown Boston, and it's the only school, as I think, in the United States where you get a degree in the liberal arts solely through the arts. So theater, journalism, poetry, radio, etc. And what we do at the Elma Lewis Center is social justice story work across whatever forms, vibes, languages the storytellers think is important, for audiences they think is important, so they can do what they want their stories to do.
Thank you. And Pam?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, Ashley. My name is Pam Gordon, and I work with Big Picture Learning. I work with various schools and programs on designing internship programs and implementing technology called AMLE that I'm going to talk a little bit about later on that helps programs with internship management, but I'll talk about that later. Big Picture Learning is a network of schools. It's a nonprofit organization that has a network of schools around the country and actually around the world that really engages students with a focus on interests, relationships, and practice, and focuses a lot on getting students out into the real world. And Big Picture also has a number of different initiatives that are not necessarily school-based, also with the idea of engaging students through interests and getting them out to practice and building relationships with people in the workforce.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'll add real quick as well that I'm serving as a moderator, but also something really exciting is that ASA is a worksite partner for Apprentice Learning this fall. So we have 4 middle school apprentices that join us every week to try out various different department work and work alongside us in career exploration for students. So I'm going to stop share. That way I can see everybody's faces as we have this discussion, because this is really going to be about some really passionate folks getting together to talk about something we really care about. And so really to start this conversation, this is kind of a question for the general group. We're talking about work-based learning here. What does that mean? What is work-based learning? Are there any key characteristics of work-based learning that you can share that would help us understand exactly what experiences could be work-based learning, and why is this really critical for students when it comes to career exploration and readiness? Aletta, I think you're on mute.
Wikipedia says that work-based learning is an educational strategy that provides students with real-world work-life experience, right? And I like that. And I would say that work-based learning is experiential. It demands that for work-based learning to be effective, it demands that old mantra, right? It takes a village. So curating relationships within the community, and that for us at Apprentice Learning, work-based learning is about being courage ready, community ready, and work ready. And you said something earlier, Ashley, that was about empowered autonomy. So it's providing these experiences that will allow a young person to have that empowered autonomy as they move through life.
I guess I can also add that I think sort of you, Ashley, earlier when you started with thinking about the middle grades and how important those middle grades are, I think work-based learning also offers an opportunity for young people, middle grades and high school, and actually elementary school, but we won't go there now, to really think about themselves and their identities and who they are and what kinds of decisions they might make in their future lives, but while kind of being held and taken care of by a group of adults, and also building relationships. I think I said that earlier, just in my little brief explanation of what we do, but.
Absolutely.
I would, and apologies, I keep getting up. We're in the change of shift at the moment, and I'm the only one to answer the door today. A couple people are out sick. So it might happen again. I have to get up and just answer the door. I would say also that, at least in the intentions that I've been bringing to this first time working with Apprentice Learning, which is Rock the House. It's been amazing. I want to do it like forever. I would say is also thinking about this whole of like the approach on our end, like how can we create an environment from initial meeting throughout the process and then whatever transition happens next, so that people have what would probably be an elevated, which is really just dignified human experience, and where the expectations can also be set. And from there, I think in an abolitionist reparations standpoint, so that I can say more later, but that's what I would say I would like work-based learning to be now, in addition to, in person or whatever that means, hands-on, doing the work and not just reading about it, and being in the environmental context as opposed to reading about it in a classroom context. So there is that. I think we can do so much more. And especially being at the Elma Lewis Center, it's because it's what we do. So it's it actually gives us an opportunity to practice what we say we preach. If that makes sense, and learn where we're failing too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that environmental context is really critical here, right? And so a lot of examples of work-based learning that are like kind of traditional examples that we've seen are things like internships, apprenticeships, job shadowing, interviews with professionals. There could be all these different examples of experiential learning. Often those you see in high school or college. And I know, Letta, you're going to share that that's not in fact the case. That doesn't have to be the case, right? But so this next question is really like about the middle school part. Like, is it too early? And I know, Pam, you mentioned elementary, right? Is it too early to have work-based learning experiences? And how, or if, like, how do these vary from high school experiences?
Pam, you want to start? Do you want me to?
So my quick answer is no, it's not too early. I guess I wouldn't be here if I said yes, it was, but no, it's absolutely not too early. I think middle grades are a very important time and moment to help students really start this exploration about themselves, and start the notion of getting out. That school doesn't, you don't only learn in the four walls of the school. There's so much learning beyond, and there are so many experts, and we have two of them with mentors on here today, experts in the field that you can learn from. And school then, or the program that they're working with, then becomes the place to sort of help think through that, reflect and think through learning. But I think that it's very important, or it's possible and important, to start thinking about students, middle grade students, not only engaging in work-based learning, but also getting out of the building. And I work with Letta and Apprentice Learning, so I get really excited about the work that they're doing. So
I completely agree. Middle school is not too early at all. It is absolutely right on time in many ways. For young people at that age, the school has begun sometimes to start working as that school to prison pipeline, or at least that school to boxing you into a way of being pipeline. And when you have a work-based experience, it actually becomes like a portal, right? Or like a doorway to the rest of your life. Like it does what Pam is saying around, where we learn and how we learn never has to be confined in four walls, right? But we need these fundamental skills about how to interact with the world in order to keep moving in the world and become a part of the world. And so many young people within the public school system, at any rate, are already disenfranchised, right? And disinvited. So when you have a work-based experience that leads to career exploration, that leads to you opening up your own mind and body and being and saying, I'm worthy of trying this thing, then there's never too early for that, because the clamping down starts really early, right? So we are offering supportive adults, supportive communities are offering keys to this really rich environment that everyone should have access to, right? It's not, I take some folks are like, underprivileged and privileged. No, these are basic rights that we are offering access to. So never too early.
I would like to add something there that I've learned, because I'm new to this, and I'm a mom. So I have experience with one daughter going through 8th grade. She's now 15. I have 30 years experience of teaching in a college and university setting as a full-time faculty person. And I have been blown away by what the 8th graders are bringing in. And I listen very carefully also to what all my students say, and then the apprentices as well. And the 8th graders have been able to come in with all their vast experience in story work. I mean, they do that all day long, right? It's what people do anyway. In their case, they have a digital component. They have been able to get things done faster. We asked them to caption art. It's art by original artists around this center. There's a lot of art here, and none of it is captioned yet and put on the wall. I haven't seen, and this isn't a criticism of the college students at all. I love them too. Just I have yet to see that. And it was across all 3 of the apprentices who come from some of them different, different family backgrounds and so forth. And the other thing I'm noticing, and I'm extremely sensitive to this because I work with 18-year-olds, they're basically like high schoolers with a summer, and then they go to college, and then they have access more freely to alcohol, which causes all this problems because they're first-year college students, And then I have a 15-year-old daughter who's going through it. And I still see this light, this glint, this buoyancy, this hope in 8th graders who are coming, that I'm seeing in a very systematic fashion being just drained from the uninvitedness of the rest of what is a lot of their schooling system, not the whole schooling system. But I have seen this increase generationally in college anyway. I hope not in my classes, but just saying, like, in 30 years, I've seen it get worse, not better. And it is the most difficult for youth of color. And if you add on other intersectionalities like LGBTQ, trans, immigrant, especially newly arrived, other linguistic groups, other than English, I mean, not that that's an other, so et cetera. And so it's been such a blessing to see and to learn. And also the last thing I would say is that I think it's really important in these, that this gives an opportunity, Apprentice Learning and the apprenticeships, to really emphasize how much the 8th graders, in my case, already bring in, the experience they already have. And that isn't to say that they don't have things to learn, just they can apply that in all of these ways. They know stuff I don't know. So it's been very powerful already. And we've only had about 3 sessions, but I just wanted to say that. And I didn't know that about 8th grade or 7th grade. I didn't experience it that way myself. I had a horrible time in 7th and 8th grade. And so for me, it was always like, oh, and that was when I got beaten down, by all sides. And so what I'm seeing, at least in this experience, is something very different. And also the way that Apprentice Learning cultivates it is phenomenal. Makes a big difference.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would share as a worksite partner as well. We've worked with our apprentices now for 4 weeks, and they're rotating in different departments. So they worked on our philanthropy team and read some grant proposals. They worked with our marketing team and created some advertisements. They were just working with our research team. And at a place like American Student Assistance and so many other education focused, or really any organization that's focused on any issue like that impacts students, we often have conversations without students actually physically there. And if we're talking about having a student-centered approach, which I know many school districts are having those conversations, how do you shift instruction? How do you shift experiences where students are centered? Giving them experiences where they then, these aren't necessarily like activities that they're trying out, like it's more of, and that is what they're doing, but they're also giving us actual feedback that we're using. Those insights about those grant proposals was really helpful for us because we were like, okay, so this is what they want us to fund, right? If we're having those conversations without students in the room, then we're not really fully considering where their needs and wants are and where they see their experiences going. I also want to add before we kind of move to the next question that when we're talking about work-based learning and career exploration for middle grades, we're not talking about tracking students, right? We're not talking about following one path and this being like, you're going to a high school program, you're taking these classes. It's more about opening up all of these opportunities. I love how you mentioned that portal piece. Like it's giving like a window to all of these different opportunities so they can then decide what's interesting and what might not be interesting. I had a conversation with a student earlier this week who thought she wanted to be a teacher and went into a preschool classroom and was like, I'm not sure about that. And then one of her hobbies over the last couple of years has been plants, like growing plants and planting in her garden, which I wish was a skill of mine. Every plant I had over the pandemic has since died, but she has a whole garden of plants. And she got a apprenticeship at a plant shop and was able to kind of have those conversations and connect people to their, like what plants they would be interested in. So that was a really cool experience for her. And she's currently in 9th grade, but has had these experiences. This was actually at a big picture learning school where I was talking to her earlier this week. So which actually kind of goes into my next question, which is for Pam. You mentioned Emblaze, you mentioned Be Unbound. Over the last couple of years, ed tech has been such a big part of the conversation, right? When school districts were completely virtual, but then as we've opened up things again, there are definitely best practices we want to take from those virtual opportunities, but then also how do we find the right mix of this hybrid? How do we navigate this pandemic situation we're still in right now? And I think Emblaze and Be Unbound does something really interesting to connect students to experiences. So if you could share a little bit more about how this works.
Yeah, sure. So Emblaze is I'll start with Emblaze and then they kind of work together as well. But Emblaze is a platform, web-based and app. We have an app that's used to connect students to opportunities in their immediate vicinity, but also depending on how it's being set up with multiple schools or just one school, it could be in a broader region. It serves as a sort of organically curated database. So we don't take a workforce development list of jobs or in a state and just upload them into Emblaze. We have schools and students and community members build their own database of opportunities that students can access. And a huge piece of that is, and we talk about this with students, is helping students access and create social capital. Think about social capital. So students are connecting with people, building networks and connecting with people who others might know. So if you think about all of the folks in us, and right now I'm just talking about it in school, but Apprentice Learning is also using Emblaze. So it's not just school-based. But if you think about, all of the folks in a school, from teachers to students to parents to staff members, the networks that each person has are just incredible. And so Emblaze, when it's implemented, invites people to add opportunities they might have to that database. It then becomes, so students, it really places students at the center of their experience, having students search through this kind of organically curated database, but also ever evolving depending on the experiences. So searching for opportunities, but then there's a whole process that I'm not going to go into, but once they get an opportunity, it also then becomes a way for students to take ownership of checking in and checking out and attendance, and taking that ownership of making sure the folks back at their school or at a program like Apprentice Learning know that they are there. There's also in Emblaze a place for students to write their daily goals down and then go back and think about, did they meet their daily goals? Was there an adult present? Was their mentor actually there? Which they usually are. That's just helping them think about that connection. And then the mentor actually has an opportunity through Emblaze either at the end of the day or at the end of the week to give feedback to the student and the adult on the school or program end in charge. So Emblaze is used by schools, public, I don't know if there are any private, but big picture schools as well as other schools. Actually, I do know it's used by private schools, but it's used by a variety of different programs as well. So like I said, Apprentice Learning has just adopted it and we're working on it. And then to really quickly move into Be Unbound. So Be Unbound is a newer initiative. And the idea of Be Unbound is to really start to try to offer students who maybe are not at offer an opportunity for students to get work-based learning opportunities not through their schools. So maybe through a community-based organization or just as an individual, you can join Be Unbound and you can get connected to the Be Unbound database is going to be a global one. So maybe I think this is what you were mentioning, Ashley, you're connecting virtually. You're not necessarily just, maybe you have an interest in aerospace engineering and there's no aerospace engineer near you, but you can find that person through the Be Unbound database and connect virtually. So that's a very exciting newer initiative for Big Picture that to really just kind of bring what we offer to students across the world, really. It's not also just limited to the US. So
it's all really exciting. And I think what I find really fascinating about Emblaze and Be Unbound is it really tackles a challenge that every school district has, right? Like, how do you streamline the process for internships and opportunities? So often school districts have you have a spreadsheet, right? And these are all the different kinds of experiences that are in the community. And then you try to connect them and you have somebody who probably spends every single day doing that, every single minute. And this kind of streamlines this process. And it's a really engaging, it's almost like an Airbnb kind of look to it, where students can go through and kind of identify those opportunities. And it centers the student and also really centers their community and what the opportunities are within kind of their larger region or around their school district. So, and it involves so many stakeholders, which kind of leads into my next question for you. For this, if many school districts are trying to streamline this kind of process or build these experiential opportunities, how does Big Picture Learning, either through Emblaze and Be Unbound or otherwise, support educators, community members, employers, students in this kind of collaborative relationships to bring opportunities for students?
That's an excellent question. So I think it's Emblaze is really a really perfect place to do that. It's this one platform that everybody can contribute the piece that they need to contribute. So so mentors, for instance, they don't need to, and we also like to make things very simple for mentors have a lot on their plate. We're asking a lot of them. So mentors, really the opportunity there is for them to give some feedback, but also if they can also add themselves to, or there's all sorts of different ways we have set up for community members to say, hey, we have an opportunity. I have a business down the road that would love to have an 8th grader or a high school student. And so we give each program or school would have a form that they could send to that person. So it's really streamlining. I mean, I think, Ashley, what you just said is it's a internship or apprenticeship or work-based learning or all of the above. It's a lot to organize. And Emblaze was developed by somebody who was an internship coordinator at a school in California, David Berg. And he was and this kind of came out of his experience. What did we need? Like, how do we get away from these multiple spreadsheets? I worked with a small school in Leominster, that's a big picture school, and it was small enough that we could kind of yell down the hall, is is John going to this place? But even they use Emblaze in force. So it helps educators too, in that it's a really good way for educators to sort of streamline processes. There's a practicality of it that's immeasurable. Attendance. So, a lot of people rely on their students texting them or calling them to say that they got there. And the idea with Emblaze is the student has it on their phone. They get to their internship or apprenticeship or opportunity, and they go in and they click check in. And then there's also, and then in the moment they check in, there's a GPS locator, so we know that they got there. Then it goes away. But but so there's a lot. It's a big streamlining process. And then I think a little piece also, that's kind of the practicality of the platform. One of the things that we do when schools and programs adopt Emblaze, we provide coaching. We help them, and the idea is that we're also helping them think about not only just how to use Emblaze, but how to think about work-based learning, that kind of thing. So Apprentice Learning has such a well-oiled machine that we're just working on Emblaze there. But
it is a well-oiled machine, and the oil that you have provided has made it so much better, right? We are definitely an organization full of spreadsheets, and Emblaze, the opportunity we're piloting with Emblaze, with Big Picture Learning and that platform right now, and it's been an eye-opener, right, for things that we need to be including on our spreadsheets, actually on the Big Picture, on the Emblaze app, things that we would like to know in a more streamlined fashion. And also I think for Emblaze, it's been really helpful because I don't know that you all have worked with a middle grade yet before. So we're both learning a lot from each other. And we should, by the end of this semester or worksite experience, apprenticeship experience, we should know a little bit more information to make the next one even better.
Yeah,
right.
Agree.
Absolutely. I've gotten a few questions in the Q&A about accessing the site, which I'm unable to use the chat. So I'm going to actually share screen real quick. So those of you who are interested in accessing it right now, Emblaze is emblaze.org. So if you want to look at it, and then Be Unbound, it's be-unbound.org. I will have these in the slide deck, which we will send to all attendees. But if you are interested in seeing this resource right now in real time as we're talking about it, it's emblaze.org here and beunbound.org. Also, Stephanie, I'm not sure if you're able to use the chat feature, but if you can, share it with the group. So Letta, as you were talking about this relationship between Big Picture Learning and Apprentice Learning, I'm hoping you can give a little bit more context, because we've been praising Apprentice Learning for the last 30 minutes, talking about the experiences we've had with the apprentices, how they have taught us through some of our work and how it's shifting some of our conversations. Can you share a little bit more about exactly what Apprentice Learning does? What are the different offerings for middle school students, and share a little bit more?
Absolutely. So we have several programs. I'm going to talk about the 7th and rising 8th grader and the 9th grade programs, and then I'm going to talk about apprenticeships, right? So for our rising, so for our 7th graders, we have what we call workplace explorations, and that is generally a one-day workplace virtual or in-person visit to a business, so that they can see the opportunities that are available there and practice skills, right? Such as shaking a hand, looking someone in the eye, just a general, it's sort of like the Paul Revere, and not that I'm trying to rep Paul Revere, but moment of like the apprenticeships are coming, their apprenticeships are coming next year. It's our way of building a relationship with these 7th graders who will be 8th graders the next year, right? So I'm gonna skip over the 8th grade year for just a second and tell you that for rising 9th graders, so for people that have finished our 8th grade year with us, we have something called City Summer Internship, which is alumni that identify as female or gender expansive. And it's a hybrid sometimes. This year, it was actually all in person, but it's a 5-week paid career exploration in STEAM. careers where women are under-amplified, underrepresented, or maybe not even young people who identify as girls don't necessarily even know that this is a career that's possible, right? And then we have Launch Plus, which is for our 9th graders, and it is an all virtual program. It's a 40-hour paid skills internship for alumni over 14 weeks. Some of the capstones of that are that they deepen their professional skills. They learn how to fill out forms online, right? Which all of us as soon as COVID hit, had to relearn. So we had to learn with them, and now they are learning with us. But how do you virtually sign a document? Do you know where your social security number is? Do you know where your address is? Like where are you actually getting things sent to? And we found that so many people don't know that yet. And so that's been a deep practice in them formulating those skills, right? And the job from that is that at the end of that program, they all fill out a job application for the Summer Works program in the city of Boston. One of the capstones is that last year they were all able to get, not all, most of them were able to get mass IDs, which allowed them some more access to navigate the city and to get jobs, right? And to find work that they enjoy. So those are 3 of our programs, and the program I want to talk most about is our apprenticeships. We go into the schools and we partner with the schools, the communities, the families, et cetera, to teach. We teach 6 workshops of what some people call soft skills. We like to call essential skills, right? And it is things like, what is your learning style? What is your signature strength? Can you stand up and speak your truth, meaning who you are, and say what your name is? Can you help people pronounce your name correctly? Like, can you shake a hand? Can you say what you're interested in? And then during that time, so it's 6 weeks. During that time, they make a video resume, and they also have told us what some of their interests are. And so they are paired. Well, they get some choices around what type of apprenticeship they might like to do. And then they are paired with a particular apprenticeship. We tell them you have, between 1 and 5 choices. You're definitely not guaranteed to get your first one. You might, that would be beautiful, but you're guaranteed to get hopefully one of those 5, right? And so then they go, after that 6 weeks of workshops, they head out into the world and they do 6 weeks of once a week, 2 hours during one day, during the school day of an apprenticeship with folks like Tam and folks like Ashley. And it is one of the most amazing things to see young people walk out the door, right? What else can I tell you about our apprenticeships? We have started recently, like I said, working with AMLE and Pam, and she has been amazing in helping us figure out how to coordinate our apprenticeships with that application. So, before, all of the young people, they have to call in when they get there and then call out when they leave. And we have our staff come through during the 2-hour time to check in and see if they're there. We still come through to see if they're there. And not just to see if they're there, to see if they're smiling or to see if they're grunting because the work is hard, because not all the time do we smile when we're working, right? But to see if they are engaged and to see if the worksite partner is engaged, right? It's just part of our relationship building. But the Emblaze app allows us to, for the young person to take some ownership of their arrival in a different way, to check in on this app and to check out on this app. We are still piloting it. It is been really helpful when they actually use it. And we are trying to figure out ways to help them continue to use it, because when they do it, it's amazing. It has questions at the end, like, what are your goals for the day? Did you achieve your goals for the day? So we're really excited about continuing our partnership there. The young people have apprenticeships that are all over the city. We really believe that the city is yours, right? One of the things that's really important, I don't know if anyone reads Toni Morrison, but in her novels, every single person is a viable part of the community, right? So in our model, we work with every single 8th grader at any partner school that we're in. And we believe that every single 8th grader has something to offer and something to receive, right? That they are viable, already members of the community. And the work-based experience, the apprenticeship needs to be, because we're grown and we're adults, it needs to be geared towards something that they can do and feel successful at. right? And they need to stretch a little bit, right? And we offer that safe space to be able to do that. So then one thing I forgot to add is that part of the apprenticeship is learning how to navigate the city, right? And part of the apprenticeship is families trusting us to let their kids learn how to navigate the city. So I hope that's been helpful.
Yeah, that is. Can you give an example or a few examples of
Where they-
some of the apprenticeships that they've joined? Some of the organizations we shared are places of work, but like, what are some other examples of what eighth graders
Absolutely.
have engaged in?
Well, on the East Coast, in the city of Boston and a little bit of Cambridge, we'd go to HubSpot, Pine Village Preschool, Mike's Fitness, Pet Cabaret, Trinity Financial, Georgia Shoes, let's see, Baker Hughes, Gallery Eye Care, you name it. We've done some things, hopefully there. Cityscapes, which is with plants, because you were talking about a young person that enjoyed plants.
Yep.
Or we have a new engagement with a place called Around the Corner Framing. So the person is learning, the apprentice is learning how to do framing, right? And I think that's really amazing. There's another person that's working with an entrepreneur at this business called Salt, which is in the South End. And what else? There's Boston Ballet. There is Everything is Real, Barbershop, and Gallery Eye Care. I am smiling so hard just because I truly love the opportunities and the wide berth of opportunities. And you might find a young person, oh, a community servings, right, is one as well. You might find that a young person doesn't actually enjoy what they thought they were going to enjoy. Well, that's also really great information for them, right? And I will leave this part of this conversation with this. There's an alumni that we had, and the quote that she gave us, that she shared with us, is in our annual report from last year, and it sticks with me, right? She said, "It was the first time an adult looked at me and trusted me with a level of responsibility, as well as being out of school to accomplish those responsibilities. It catapulted my work skills, mannerisms, and encouraged me to keep going. As a woman of color growing up in an urban city like Boston, this was the support and encouragement that I needed at a young age."
Powerful. So Tamara, as a worksite partner, and this is the first cycle of apprenticeships you've done. You shared a little bit about this earlier. What was the appeal to bringing on middle school apprentices? Often in conversations with employers, like, you need the buy-in from employers, right? Like, why middle school apprentices versus high school interns or college interns? What was the appeal for you, and what have you learned so far?
That's a great question. So just total full disclosure, it was Letta. I trust Letta. Letta and I have collaborated on a few things, and it's just been marvelous and amazing. And so if Letta says, "Hey, would you consider this?" I would. And then Apprentice Learning itself and the whole mission and everything Letta just described, and the different things you all are talking about. And then finally, it's the first time I've worked with Apprentice Learning and with eighth graders. My whole time, really, since I was in eighth grade and seventh grade, that was actually one of the bright lights for me, was doing something sort of like Apprentice Learning, although it wasn't organized like this and it wasn't anywhere as good or anything like that. It was also like 1970s. It was very different, but I really believe very much that so much of what we learn is not learned in the classroom, combined with what I said before about what can be a very harmful effect of the school system, which is so much locked in with capitalist, colonialist, racist, white supremacists, or the ists, and it functions as it's supposed to function. The school is part of this larger system, and I'm in education. I've been in education since I was in school myself, and now I'm a teacher, and then I director of a center here in a college. So I still believe that these are places where we can do really beautiful things together. And I really believe in that that people are portals. And so It shouldn't be like the institution over here and the business over here and the school over there. But how can we work together as people, and each of us, 8th graders included, portals, and portals to what? And what are we trying to build? And so the younger you can go with working with people, the more opportunity you have. And the last thing, and I don't think I've ever said it this way, Letta, but I used to be a journalist, and I worked in war zones and zones of violence, Africa, Latin America, parts of Asia, and then also in the United States. And I'm not disillusioned with journalism across the board per se. There's a lot of really important journalism out there. It's just the work that I was doing, I couldn't see how the stories I was doing was actually impacting the people that were being written about, who were being written about. I couldn't see that direct connection. And I was making a career. I was very young and not really very good at the time, because I didn't know very much about where I was, which is a problem. And I was in my 20s. And so I was making a career off the back of someone else's pain. And that just made no sense to me. It also doesn't make sense as a historian to me either, which I also am. I went and got a PhD. And so what I've been really dedicating my life to in the last several decades is working directly with people. It's their story. It's your story. What do you want your story to do? That's it. And so being able to work with young people in that way is really powerful. Why would I want to do apprentice learning again is because, first of all, that the what is that thing called? Orientation with us as employers was amazing. That slideshow was amazing. And it was organized so well on Zoom. And the question was, who were you in 8th grade? Instead of this big, long introduction of all these things you're supposed to be and, whatever. And then emphasis on people's names. If you can pronounce Bob, then you can pronounce Kanasia, right? If you can pronounce this, then you can pronounce that. I thought it was just extremely, extremely well done. The emphasis on names and the emphasis on humility and all of us as earthlings. It was so beautifully done. And that is the very same thing that we teach with college students when we go into zones of violence to work with displacement camps and community organizers in Colombia. It's the same thing. And so many of the college students, and they're 20 years old, they don't know that yet. So for 8th graders to know that, and absolutely just arriving to our door here in the center, they've learned something. That takes guts. So I'll stop there, but those are the things that inspire me the most.
Yeah, absolutely. I will also share as a worksite partner, like the appeal. I brought up the point of being an education organization and bringing students in and learning from students is a really critical piece. But then also as employers, we also have a duty to support future leaders, right? And to kind of think about the workforce a little bit differently. And this kind of goes into my next question, which could be the final question. I see we've got a few more minutes left. I would encourage anybody who's here to ask some questions in the chat. I have plenty of other questions. I think we could chat about this all day. But thinking about this, we've talked about all of these really useful resources. There's Emblaze, Be Unbound. Apprentice Learning is a model that's located currently in Boston. If somebody's listening to this and they're like, okay, how can I replicate pieces of this? Like, what do I take from this? I think the employer engagement part is really critical. And that's an area that a lot of school districts are thinking about. Recruiting, supporting, and building those lasting relationships for employers. How do you get to that point where you then have these relationships that students can engage in? So Pam and Letta, if you could share how both BPL and Apprentice Learning tackle recruitment and support. And Tamara, it would be interesting to hear about how you prepared for apprentices. What resources, you mentioned some resources you had, but just really curious. So opening it to that, but then if there are any other practices that are replicable that folks can use tomorrow if they wanted to, or plan for in the next school year.
I can say a couple of things. I could say a lot, but I'll say a couple of things and then Letta can join in. So I think actually Tamara sort of hit or said it well. She knew Letta and she trusted Letta. And that's when we think about networks and social capital, that's a huge piece of it. So we're asking the people in our school community or program community for names and ideas around who might be interested in hosting a student. So that's kind of on the adult end, but we also in the big picture schools that I've worked with, we also send our students out. That doesn't students look around and do a fair amount of cold calling, but we prepare them for that. So I think that's a huge piece when I get pushback on not just middle grades, but if you count ninth grade in those middle grades, right? There's a lot of people save the internships for junior, senior year. And sorry, I'm going sideways a little bit, but just to add this, my response is, well, if you work with and prepare ninth graders, they are absolutely ready. They can be out there, and then we see it in the kinds of organizations like Apprentice Learning with even younger students. But I think we tap into our networks a lot, our own personal networks. And then we also, if a student is prepared with a elevator speech or questions that they have, and they call up an organization, they might get a hang up. It might happen. But they also might really impress a person who then turns around and says, yeah, I'll give you 20 minutes of my time to talk to you. And then that could lead into a job shadow or an internship or something like that, or even just being added to the database of opportunities. So.
And I would add that for us, the relationships with worksite partners actually start with our incredible staff. We ask our young people to get ready to be courage ready, work ready, and community ready, and our staff replicate that and model that. And they do that in many ways, when we're thinking about our worksite partners, we look at our community as everything from the front door, when you step out the front door of that school, and actually sometimes within the school, for a school side, a worksite could be up to 20-30 minutes away, right? So we want worksite partners that are close to wherever this young person is, and sometimes worksite partners where you have to travel a little bit, to expand your range. So the thing that's necessary is curiosity, right? In addition to this relationship building or relationship nurturing and the social capital, we walk around the neighborhoods where we are and we look to see what is interesting, what looks possible. We walk around when we go places and we see other places that look interesting, like that aren't necessarily close to the school. We read the paper, and if there's an interesting business, we might call them up. We are constantly looking for various opportunities for our young people to experience. The thing that we look for in a worksite partner is an initial person who is connected to other people who absolutely believe that young people are already amazing, right? And they might not know how to work with a young person yet, right? Because we're not exactly well practiced in that if they're not our nieces, nephews, and children, right? But however, they want to, and if they're interested, then we're able, because we can't necessarily help someone if they just don't like young people. But if you like young people and you're interested in sharing what it is that you know in an apprenticeship model, which is how so many people over the years actually learned things, right? Like somebody taught us how to do it. Then we're able to then have conversations with that individual work site, and or if it's a larger site, a group of people that work there. We have a staff that works really hard to develop relationships with our worksite partners. Sometimes worksite partners need us to help curate what the actual worksite experience is. A lot of times the question is, well, what could this 8th grader do? And so we are able to brainstorm with them, right? And figure out there's so many things, like from learning how to like twirl a pizza to making posters at the Elma Lewis Center to so we have a young person at Boomerangs who's designing the show, what people come to see when they walk in, the storefront, right? So there are just so many opportunities, and sometimes it's hard for us as adults to get out of our own way and know them. So it's all a relationship building thing. I think the constant and on purpose and intentional, because we don't want to have worksite partners for a short time, right? We want to build this thing, this relationship out, so that they will continue to work with young people, and that the community will continue to work with them, et cetera. So we're building a better city, actually, you know.
This is a question. What did we do at the Elma Lewis Center to prepare?
Yeah, to prepare. And what was useful? What is something maybe that you didn't realize or like would have been helpful? And this is helpful for anybody who is trying to build those employer relationships and prepare, as Letta was mentioning, preparing an employer to have these experiences ready for middle schoolers.
So so the initial preparation really did come from that orientation that Apprentice Learning did, and that beautiful slideshow and the Zoom. It was so beautifully curated. It just felt like oxygen, you know, just like, I mean, it was really, really helpful. The video introductions were also helpful. It made me think it would be cool to do a video introduction on our end. So they're presenting themselves to us, but they could look us up, I guess, you know, on our website and everything. It was just a thought. Or that might be more intimidating. I don't know on our end, but anyway, it was lovely to be able to see them and hear them and see their body language a little bit first. So that was really cool. The other thing we did, and this is just a logistical thing, is we have to make sure we're all quarried, you know, because we're a college and we're working with youth. So just making sure that whoever was going to be in this center, in this building, fulfilled that requirement legally. And then really thinking about, okay, how many days do we have? How many hours? And the way we work here is we work with a combination of ganas, which is Spanish for desire. You know, like, what do you want to do? What skill sets do you already bring that you'd like to apply? And then also allowing for the fact that sometimes people don't know. I mean, they can't know what they don't know. So if you ask them, what do you want to do? But they don't know, there's all this stuff as an option. And so thinking about how to, without being overwhelming, introduce them to our 7 projects that we do here. And then thinking about ways in which on the spot, like depending on what people said, what could they do? And then breaking that down. And that's where applying the skills as a teacher was helpful. Like thinking about that, like what's actually possible. And then watching how it actually goes, because, you know, and Letta was good. Like there was an email that said, they might say they know how to do it, but they might not really know how to do it. And then, you know, so watching that. And then also, this is the other thing that I was reminded of, is that people are sitting an awful lot. They're sitting, they got a lot of energy pent up, you know, too much Zoom, too much sitting. And so thinking about watching who really likes to move around. And so I reconfigured in the second and third and the final sessions, so that people are moving around, so they can do the things that need to be done. And it involves, most people, they want to move. They want to move their arms and legs and their bodies. And so thinking of ways they could do that. So I would say those things were things that I learned. And then the other thing was just how much the 8th graders could already do. I underestimated that. I don't know. I feel terrible saying that, but I'm used to the first year students who come into college and they're often, you know, there's so many firsts and they live here and they're homesick and stuff. So maybe there's all those combinations too. It's a lot of firsts for first year students, especially living in a city. If they never lived in a city and so forth. So that's also part of it. Whereas the 8th graders came in and they're like, you know, they're like, what do I do next? I'm like, you finished that already? Oh no. Okay. Oh, great. You know, and then figuring out the next thing. And they have mad skills for story work. So that was, yeah. So now that I have more of a sense of that, being able to move forward. And also I noticed a sense of, well, my teacher says I can't do that, or I don't do this well. And waiting and pausing and offering it up anyway, because that's something they're parroting, but it might not even be true. And so seeing that you actually do that well. And so really listening, what I would like to do if I ever get another opportunity, which I hope we do at the Elma Lewis Center, is listening for those moments and the patterns when people say, so-and-so says I don't do this very well, or I'm not good at that. And what if they had an opportunity to do that, to see how well they actually can do it, and then to say so? Is that a way in a small sliver moment to intervene in the beating down part and instead, expand the voices in people's hearts and heads, if that makes sense?
Absolutely. I could definitely share, like, they can do kind of everything. At ASA, they created some websites with our ISD department and learned how to like all about security and IT. They created advertisements, and they know social media better than our social media managers. So they were like schooling them on some things. This last week, they worked with our research team. This next week, they're product testing. So there's really just so many opportunities there. And I know at that point, we're pretty much at time now, which is it always flies by really fast, especially when it's such a great discussion. So first and foremost, I want to thank our panelists here today, Pam, Letta, Tamara. Thank you so much for your time. We will be emailing out a list of resources. So some of them that we didn't even really get to this time around. So I actually think I shared the wrong screen here. Let me share the right screen. So one resource is we have our ASA AMLE playbook, which is focused on middle school career exploration. So all of these best practices are also in this playbook. ASA also has a toolkit that we wrote with Big Sister of Greater Boston, focused on community relationships and engagement. Another really great resource there. We have 2 free digital tools we'll be sharing links to that you can use with your middle grade students, as well as some of our research and white papers on middle grades career exploration and learning. So if you want to talk to your administration or have conversations about implementing programs, this research is supportive in that. And I will also add information about Emblaze, Be Unbound, Apprentice Learning, and any additional resources we have to this, as well as our contact information if anybody wants to reach out if they have questions. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you have a great holiday season, relaxing holiday season. I know for many of you, you're almost there to break, and have a great rest of your evening, everybody.
Thank you everyone for joining us. For the benefit of everyone here in person and those joining us virtually, you can claim your contact hours. If you registered, you'll get an email automatically tomorrow. If not, there's a form on the recorded webinars page where you can claim those contact hours. Thank you so much to ASA for moderating this conversation. We love bringing these new amazing ideas about how empowered our middle school students can be and what they're ready for developmentally during this age. So thank you so much to the panelists for bringing that to the forefront in this conversation. Thank you to everybody, and I hope you all have a great night.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.